is this your? Okay, so our webinar have been recording. Hi, Shahrior, how are you?
Good evening, dear teachers.
Hi,
Good evening, everyone. Hi.
So,
Good evening,
meet
dear
Nilufar.
colleagues. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, but we don't see you.
I don't know what, because of the internet connection, I don't know what, sometimes my camera is off. That's why I'm sorry if you can't me very well. And today, sometimes it works, sometimes not. That's why now I can start our presentation. Good evening. And 𝗠𝗵𝗺𝗃 told you that about my career background. I think it was just hard work to tell the truth to everybody. And that's why now I am ready to present to you one of the most modern techniques of reading. Now there are some questions before starting our presentation. Thank you. Now let's start our presentation before starting.
Nilufar, hello,
yes.
Nilufar. Just let's begin in 3 minutes, okay? Just be prepared because I have something to tell our auditory, and some of them are now filling in their chat box because I ask you guys again one more time. There are 42 of us. So as it seems to me, we are going to have more participants. And I just want to tell you that you should write down in chat box how many, your name, surname, the dates of participated webinars, and the number of them. I'm so sorry that I asked you to do it, but we have some things with it is just technical issues. That's why let them alone and do just ask you to please, we would like you to do this. Okay, so I participated in Havasova's, Firuza Rashidova and Farhod Kadir's, Mr. Rodney, Mr. Imamov's webinars, and also in all 8 module webinars on Friday evenings. My name is 𝗠𝗵𝗺𝗃𝗵𝗺 Odina Nishanbayevna. Yes, this is very correct because she pointed out the names of the participants. Thank you very much, Odina Khan. Okay, so we have more. So Shahrior, are you here, Shahrior? Shahrior, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
So can we see you?
I'm here.
Okay, I see that you are a lot of you there. See that you are very many people around you. I see. Guys, now meet Shahrior Rozmetov from Hungarian. She is one of our best webinar conductors, presenters, and I do hope that very soon we are going to have the conference, offline conference, face-to-face with the conference, to CLIL or not to CLIL. If you remember, CLIL stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning. And we have a lot of teachers around Tashkent region, more than 40 of them, who presents or who conducts CLIL lessons during their teaching activities. So we'll announce it later, and Shahrior is one of the presenters there. And
one of them is me, and one of them is here. Yulia Sesoyeva.
Okay. Yes, I know. I just yeah. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Okay, but we will count you as a one person, Yulia Vladimirovna, and the next one is Shahrior Rozmetov. Okay, so who is interested in that topic, please write to my personal account, and I know that I can take into consideration. And one more thing, guys, we will invite only UzTEA members. That makes sense for just we're sorry, but in this case, about 40 people will be only UzTEA members to participate in offline conference in UzTEA headquarters in Tashkent. It is in Shata Rustaveli, 53B building. Okay, so there are 44 hours, and so off we go. Nilufar Kurbanova, the floor is yours. Ah, yes. Shahriyor, yes. Shahriyor, do you want to?
I would like also to talk
Just Nilufar, just a minute. Yes.
I know that most of us know.
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about her. She's one of the holders of the TEFL and everything that is in Uzbekistan. She has graduated from Webster University, and she's one of the real teachers who really cares about the future of our teachers and students. And she's also one of the best facilitators who is working with us in online teaching community.
Thank you.
Will you repeat? This is Nilufar Kurbanova, yes?
Yes,
You were speaking about Nilufar Kurbanova, yes. So welcome, our applauses to you, Nilufar Kurbanova.
Thank you.
Let's go. So what about your, I like to see your video, but unfortunately we cannot.
Yes, today is, it doesn't make, I think.
Yes, this is disaster for us. Okay, so Karimboy, will you, Karimboy, iltimos demonstratsiya ekranini share qiling, Nilufar bilan.
Manda bor ekan, ishlayapti. It's working.
Okay, that's тогда нормально. So let's go. You may begin.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Before presenting the presentation, I'm going to ask you some warming up questions related to teaching reading. Now, dear teachers, you can write on the chat box, or you can share your ideas orally about reading strategies and something that I can identify how much you know about teaching reading, not reading, but teaching reading. Okay. The first question is top-down processing. What is top-down processing in reading? Top-down processing.
You may ask, have you ever heard about that? Yes, have you ever heard about this?
Yes or no? Do you know it or no? Okay. Top-down processing. And what is bottom-up processing in reading?
If I'm not mistaken, something related to skimming and scanning. Am I right?
Yes, a bit similar. Yes. And and what do you understand by intensive reading and extensive reading?
Can I answer?
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think top-down processing or reading. Top-down reading, maybe it's from the big chapters to the small ones, from the big ideas to the small details.
Okay. And Kamaluddin says that bottom down, it is about for detailed information. Something they say, someone says that about reading the first and concentrating on vocabulary and so on. Okay, a bit similar. Yeah, you are close. And grammar and vocabulary usually discussed in extensive reading or intensive reading, where we discuss usually grammar and vocabulary and the new words in intensive or extensive. Okay, intensive.
Intensive.
Yes, and teaching reading has specific purposes. Is it right or not?
Yes, it's right.
Okay, we have different specific purposes of teaching reading. Okay.
Yes.
Now let me start my presentation. Is it visible?
Yes, now yes.
Okay. Modern methods of teaching reading. techniques of developing reading skills. And today's agenda are easy steps of creating a perfect reading unit for our students, essential reading skills and strategies, and how to teach a perfect reading lesson, and simple ways to make reading lessons fun, which can be very interesting and very beneficial for our students, I think. And conclusion. And reading we have chosen for our students should always be authentic. It means that related to realia, and the content should be interesting for our students, such as their everyday lives, for example, fashion, images, and technology, and etc. And it should be more difficult than their real levels, and with more challenging vocabulary there.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we don't see your screen.
Oh, you can't see?
Yes.
When I press F5,
Yes,
you can't see.
Now it's okay. Now
it's okay. Okay. So I can't make it bigger. Okay. If I make it bigger, you can't see.
Good. Do whatever you can.
Okay. And authentic reading should be authentic, related to realia, and also it should be more challenging with vocabulary reading, or more challenging than their real levels. For example, if our students are elementary students, there should be some 3 or 5 items of vocabulary related to pre-intermediate, and structurally simple and not weighed down with vocabulary complexity for beginner students. Usually they are scared of reading. That's why sometimes pay attention to that also. Not so difficult, not so complex for them. And reading is the action or skill of reading written or printed matter silently or aloud usually. But what about learning outcomes today? Teachers will be able to apply the principles and strategies of teaching reading effectively in this presentation, after this presentation, and you can make reading a fun activity for your students, and you can evaluate the need for reading for students. And schema story, what is it? What does it stand for? Schema story. And schema story usually tries to explain how readers utilize or apply prior knowledge to understand and get new. Yes.
Hello, Nilufar. You may just switch off your demonstration, then click F5 and you will have.
When I press F5, you can't see the whole screen. I tried
because our IT guys told me that. Okay.
Yes. But I can see that now. I'm pressing it. F5.
Because we are recording it. That's why.
Demonstrasyani o'chirib turib keyin qilasiz.
Aha, demonstratsiyani o'chirib turib keyin qilar ekansiz.
Okay.
Endi texnik narsalar borda, biz recording qilib YouTube ga qo'yamizda, shuning uchun yaxshi chiqish kerak-da, Nilufar, shuning uchun aytyaptilar.
Okay.
Harakat qilib ko'raylik. Endi mana bunaqa texnik narsalar Salimaxon biladilar, juda ko'p bo'lardi bizda. Hali ham hozir kamaydi. Kirdi chiqdilarimiz yo'q. Chunki UzTEA pul to'ladi naqaga. Sotib olganmiz Zoom'ni. Shunga qarab qilyapmiz ish.
Much better than before.
Yeah.
Much better than before.
Yeah. Kuchayib boryapti. Endi UzTEA kuchayib boryapti.
Ertaga kelinglar, yangi maktabimiz ochilishiga.
Yakshanba bo'ladigan bo'ldim. Shanba kuni.
Shanba ertaga.
Rosa zo'r maktab bo'libdi, lekin rosa zo'r bo'libdi. Вообще xursand. Shuncha kutganinglar bejiz ketmabdi.
Aha, shunday. Rahmat.
I can't do it. I tried to press F5, but the screen is not visible for you.
Okay.
Even after demonstration.
Karimboy harakat qilib ko'rdilar, o'xshamadi. Bo'laversinmi? Ketaveraylikmi? Okay. So yes, Nilufar, continue, please. Go on.
Okay. And the next is schema story. It is usually the application or connecting the text, reading text with prior knowledge of our students and to get some new information. And the theory claims that some kind of written text does not carry meaning by itself. And that's why usually we can guide readers to retrieve or construct meaning from the structure or patterns of this prior knowledge. Now I'm going to show it as an example. And here you can see, for example, transportation systems such as types of or means of transportation and land, air and water transportation. And here you can see bicycle, airplane and ship. And how can we connect the content with prior knowledge of our students? Here you can see as an example, for example, students should know that before reading, such as airplanes can fly and they have wheels that they can land on and they can take passengers to different places and they have wings to make them fly and etc. And you have to check in, you have to check in before boarding. It is schema story and usually close or is close to two other important nations, namely top-down and bottom-up processing. Now we are going to these processes, such as cognitive processing. We can say it means that the mental process of our students should work there before the text or before reading and after reading or while reading the text. That's why here you can see top-down with bottom-up processing. Top-down processing, usually the use of background knowledge or schema story, as we mentioned above, to predict the meaning of the reading or listening text. And we can develop hypotheses about the content of a text, and we can update the information related to prior knowledge. It is top-down processing or top-down coding, we can say. And what about bottom-up processing, or sometimes we can also say bottom-up coding, which means that now we have some general idea of a text, and we can go to bottom-up processing, and students can focus on different sounds, and they can construct meaning from the most basic units of a language, and they can, including letters or letter clusters and words there. And usually this process emphasizes the decoding skills, not guiding learners to recognize which were brought to understanding of the text. And if we can use a metaphor here, imagine that when you go out, you can see a wall. Yes, if you see just the whole wall, it means that top-down processing. But in bottom-up processing, we can see the inside of the wall, where the bricks are laid and how many bricks are there and what is made of. We can see the inside, and we can call it in reading bottom-up processing. And you can see the whole construction there. And intensive and extensive reading can happen sometimes, or there are some purposes of reading, we can say. And intensive reading involves usually the construction of a text, which means that the aim of extensive reading is getting as much information as possible. And by reading intensively, students usually gather or focus on detail or related to the text, such as vocabulary or grammar items can be closer to this understanding of this text. And what about extensive reading? Extensive reading is usually also reading as much as possible without concerning on every detail. And occasional unknown words are not supposed to get too much attention, and students focus on the overall meaning. And for example, you can give them stories to read at home, and they can read and they can present the whole just the main idea of the story they have read at home, and they, sometimes they can't pay attention to the vocabulary items there, but just they can express their general understanding after reading, and it is called usually extensive reading. And how can you say, can we usually organize in classrooms extensive reading or intensive reading? Do you conduct intensive reading classes or extensive reading classes? Which one is priority for you?
Both of them are very useful.
Mm-hmm.
In
Do
our
you use
lessons,
extensive or
yes.
intensive reading to check their comprehension?
In most cases, I use intensive reading to check their comprehension in my teaching process.
And extensive reading? Can you use extensive reading in a classroom?
Yes, of course. This type also can be used in the classroom for enhancing reading comprehension of the students as fast as possible. Yes?
Yes, of course, yes. It means that their comprehension is not very important for you. You can give some pieces, some passages to read, and students just can share general ideas of the text, general content of the text with their peers, and they can present there. This is called extensive reading because there you don't have to work on grammar and vocabulary together. They just read, for example, different students can read different stories and they can share their experiences of reading there with the class. And this is usually called extensive reading or related to extensive reading. And what about principles of teaching reading? According to Nation, teaching grammar should follow specific principles that help boost reading skills. It means that when you are teaching grammar, you can't avoid reading. It means that students should read a lot to improve their grammar as well. And reading is always a purposeful enterprise. And to train students so that we can develop their reading skills, we should do some range of purposes. We should have some range of purposes, such as to search for specific information through skimming or scanning activities, or is your aim to learn and gain knowledge about different topics, or to be entertained so that they can be entertained while reading, or to react to a text and have a say about its content? And also pay attention to the materials so that they could be appropriate to their levels, proficiency levels. And vocabulary knowledge also should be considered, and also integration of skills, which means that although they are reading, we are focusing on their reading skills, we should pay attention to the integration of 4 skills. Not 4 skills maybe in one lesson. We can say that, for example, just we can integrate writing and reading. We can integrate their listening and reading and speaking. Yes. And maybe 4 skills can also be successful for you while reading a text or while reading something, and which is important and should be considered by a good teacher when they are or when his or her teaching reading. And what about some reading skills which we should know or we should take into consideration? The focus should be also on developing reading skills such as phonemic awareness, which means that you should pay attention to the pronunciation of some difficult words there, and spelling practice, vocabulary learning, and grammar study. And reading strategies can be previewing of a text, setting a purpose, predicting, asking questions, connecting to background knowledge, paying attention to text structure, guessing words from context, and reflecting on the text and reading to it. And text types can be, or reading types can be, gaining knowledge about something or another area that learners should be trained at developing. They should be able to differentiate between genres of text, such as they can be emails, reports, stories, newspaper articles, scientific texts, menus, for example, and everything can be to read. And you can share with your students some kind of genre-based texts. And reading a lot. Learners must be also encouraged to read a lot. You need that extensive reading, usually beneficial for them to become fluent in the future, to develop speed at reading different texts, and competency can be achieved at the end of your curriculum. And students, for it should be very useful. It could be very useful for their future careers. And how to teach reading skills. As we mentioned above, there are some purposes and objectives by a teacher and specific aims to develop students' reading. And lesson plans should be structured carefully by a teacher, and teachers usually make their decisions about the objectives of their reading comprehension lesson. There are some objectives which we can see here, and reading for a gist, for not for specific, but for general idea, general content, and reading for specific information, and reading for detailed comprehension, developing speed reading, or we can train learners in specific reading strategies, or are we interfering meaning from context, or it is a combination of the above goals. You should decide, or you should make clear objectives to teach reading. And how to teach reading usually relies on 3 stages, which are very vital for organizing or conducting our reading classes, such as pre-reading stages and while reading stage or post-reading stage. Now we are going to for further information about the 3 of them. And pre-reading activities usually are very essential parts of our reading lessons because of the following items or criteria, such as they can help students to be more prepared what they are going to read about, and the activities can be helpful for learners to anticipate the topic of reading, and we can formulate expectations about the content of the text, and which can be helpful for our students to improve their language, vocabulary, even grammar can be useful or can be used in a text. And the activities you create usually need for reading to know more about a topic, and we can create the need to learn more about the topic, and activities increase students' motivation. And always try to engage learners in pre-reading activities before starting reading. And there are some brainstorming activities. They can be in following ways, such as in groups, students brainstorm ideas relating to the topic of a text, and all the members of the group contribute to the generation of ideas about the topic, and the ideas accepted, and the teachers usually set a time for the brainstorming process, and after generating enough ideas, groups organize their ideas, and they can form usually some kind of sentences. And finally, they can share their ideas with the whole class. And in reading, you can see some kind of discussions, pictures, and predicting activities. And you can also use this kind of table for your learners. For example, know, want to know, and learned columns, or you can use, such as students can write here what they know and want to know in this reading lesson, and after the lesson they can fill here what they have learned today after reading. And you can also use a cloud of words where you can say, or where you can organize some kind of vocabulary there, and using a cloud, and students can write every word there. They can go to the board, and students one by one can remember the vocabulary or some new phrases from the read text or from the context they have read recently. And videos you can use related to the topic. And while reading activities can be beneficial for connecting students' prior knowledge with the content of the reading, and they can help gain new knowledge, and we can train them to deal with similar text in the future. And there are some examples and various examples of while reading. For example, you can create activities by yourself as well, because there are some accessible resources. And don't stick to the textbook all the time, because many teachers use textbooks, and if there are some how can I say, there are some tests or comprehension questions, they can think that that's enough, and they can use textbook activities for reading. You can create any kind of reading activities there to check their understanding of a text. And skimming is also important. One of the most important strategies of reading. Students should know what is skimming and what is scanning usually. And you know that skimming is usually related to reading the title, the headings, and the subheadings. And they read the introduction or the first paragraph, and they can predict the whole text. And reading the topic sentence of each paragraph, it should be also very useful to develop their skimming strategies. And they can look at pictures, charts, or graphs, and they can pay attention to italicized or bold-faced words or phrases in reading passage, and reading the concluding paragraph. And scanning usually refers to reading to find specific information, you know, that students can focus on names, dates, or numbers. And this is a technique which is used when one is interested in finding specific information quickly. It's also one of the ways of quick reading. And as a teacher, you can want to ask your students to scan a text to find answers and to find specific questions. And with these questions, your students can read the text, attempt to find answers to only these questions, and they can ignore irrelevant information there. You can discuss before teaching reading. You have to discuss with your students what is skimming and what is scanning strategy there. And students usually should know the purpose of these kind of reading strategies. And students may use headings and any other clues that can help them identify which part of the text and which can contain the needed information. And we can have to read selectively and skip through irrelevant sections of the text. And you can ask your students some comprehension questions, and we can say that pronominal questions, which means that there are who, what, when, where, how, and why questions can be created, or there are ready questions in your textbooks, and you can also have to create them. And there are some commands in reading, such as identify, circle, underline, describe, explain. Usually, these kind of commands should be explained to students at the beginning of the year, I think, at the beginning of the courses. For example, students should be aware of the words or the meaning of the words here or commands here. So what is circle, underline, and because during the instruction, you can't have any difficulties or struggles while teaching reading or while giving instructions during your classes. And there are some yes/no questions and true/false statements, multiple choice questions, and sentence completion. And graphic organizers there can be. Also cohesion, identifying the connectors Usually we can use this strategy or activity, not activity, we can say some strategy or understanding the text. We can identify the connectors they are using, such as however, moreover, and to see how ideas are linked within the text when they are presenting a story, the content of a story, or when they are retelling the story. And vocabulary and grammar work can be there in a text, and post-reading activities can usually be students can answer the question what I learned, and there you can organize discussions, summarizing and retelling the story activity, and think pay a share, which means that students read a text or a passage by you, and they can share their ideas and opinions with their peers. And here you can also use drawing. Students read a passage or read a text, and they can draw the illustrations to the material there. And also presentations can be very useful and beneficial for your students. And by this way, you can check your students' understanding in post-reading activities. And also, I have prepared for you some tips or steps to create a perfect unit. As we mentioned above of the presentation, your reading should be authentic, more difficult, and vocabulary complexity. And always get ready. Students pay attention to that. Students think about the content before reading, and you can use discussion questions, activating the schemata, and introduce the vocabulary, guessing the meaning from the context, give sentences with vocabulary before starting reading, and no need to use dictionaries here, and ask students to make some sentences independently related to the vocabulary in reading. And read. Communicative process can be achieved here, and you can also use jigsaw reading. Jigsaw reading means that you can cut the whole text into some pieces, and students can be divided, and different students can have different parts of reading, and sometimes it can be individual work or group work. I think can be very successful activity, because students can work in groups, and they can sometimes they can make them in order. And after that, you can assign students to read the entire text at home. If you use jigsaw reading in the classroom, usually it is a good way to assign them, or after reading, when they have finished it at home. And check their comprehension, don't forget that. And checking checking can be by written methods, such as summary writing. You can ask your students to write their summaries in terms of the text or passage they have read in the classroom. And it can be usually such kind of homework or home task for them. And you can ask some questions, and you can own your questions, and sometimes students also, they can make their own questions related to the reading material from their peers. And artistic and interactive approach can be done by a teacher, and there you can see retelling, small discussions, pictures, and quizzes can be used or can be created by a good teacher when reading. And applying skills is very important. How can we apply, or how can we implement the comprehension, or implement the skills we have learned during reading? Understanding text is very important. Point out specific grammatical structures. Don't forget to focus on grammatical structures, adjectives for beginners, for example, verb tenses there you can find. And also there are more complex structures for advanced learners, maybe relative clauses in the text, in the read material, by you, and know the structures they are studying, which means that, for example, in this unit, sport or music, they are learning present perfect and present simple. You have to prepare your reading material according to that structure, and which is very recommended by experts, and extend the activity. Analyze the stages, giving valuable judgment, and students apply the information into practice. And there can be some easy discussion questions, and you can use surveys, debates, and additional research to extend reading, which means that you can give or you can assign your students for additional research out the classroom or outside the classroom. You can give them or you can ask your students to find some information, some additional information to the topic, which can be very useful. They can present, or they can do some kind of project work together. And essential reading skills, as we mentioned above, or which you can know reading is essential. More reading, and the more reading, the better academic success by our students will be will happen or will be achieved. And fundamental reading skills to acquire are scanning and skimming, and reading for details. Students should know what they are doing now during the reading task. And what about how to teach a reading perfect, or how to perfectly, or how to make your reading fun? Warm-up questions, and 5 or 10-minute warm-up questions to move and speaking. Don't forget that at the beginning, because usually students are tired, or students want to move, especially beginner level students want to do something. Or don't forget that there are some kind of learners who are tactile learners, kinesthetic learners, and etc., or visual learners. That's why we can interpret these kind of activities. And you can generate interest by warming up questions and warming up activities. And there are some discussions, and you can give some related vocabulary activities, and you can write the words on the board, and you have to bring a ball to your classroom. And practice, produce. And how do they practice reading? You can practice reading aloud with your students, or you can make or you can use some kind of recording by some sources, by different sources. There are some famous stories where you can find the recordings of the stories, and you can use this kind of recordings, and you can read aloud if you are sure about all the vocabulary or the pronunciation, and if you don't know the correct pronunciation, I can recommend you for reading aloud the recording of the story, and read the passage pausing. You can pause when it is necessary, and you can pronounce the difficult words together. And practice more, which means that understanding the material is vital. You can ask some synonyms, antonyms of the vocabulary there, and pictures or true false questions. You can ask why the statement is true to improve their critical thinking abilities, to develop their critical thinking abilities. And they can fill in the blank sentences, and you can prepare discussion questions to use key phrases. For beginners, there are some simple questions, and you can share students can share their viewpoints according to the topic or according to the material, and there can be agrees and disagrees about the topic, and there can also be review time, ask summarizing questions, and students search topic sentences there. And simple ways of making reading class fun. You have to decorate your class. Everybody wants so that their students read a lot, and outside the class and inside the classroom. And that's why you have to find some interesting ways of encouraging your learners to read. And that's why try begin decorating your class tomorrow. And you can praise your students there, inspire them, and take their photos, and take the photo of star students. Now I am going to explain how we can make fun activities, such as you can create a studded bulletin board, as you can see on the presentation here, on the slide here. And for example, there are some star students who have read a lot in this week, and after that you can say in a month or in a year, and you can stick their photos, and you can also stick stars here. For example, the more stars next to the photo, the better reader in the class. And also host a book exchange, which means that you can use a kind of story, the same story or the same book to read. You can select with your class, and you can exchange it with another class students. And after that, they can exchange their ideas, and they can exchange their opinions as a class discussion. And also you can build some kind of relationships with those two classes, or between those two classes. And you can fill a wagon, such as you can create a reading wagon with your students, and you can decorate it together, and you can create it, and it should be very fun, functional, and reading wagon. And you can keep books there, and chapters and passages to read. And it depends on your creativity. And when the student, for example, when you are creating or when you are delivering your reading lesson, one student pulls the wagon to each student, and they can choose a passage there, they can choose a story there to read, and they can put it to its place again. And usually it is very fun way of organizing your reading classes. And you can use series, sound effect, design a place. It means that serial stories you can read, and for example, which should be very interesting, or students can find it motivating. And students usually are interested when you give them just one part of the story, the most interesting part of the story, and the next time they can continue reading the continuation of the story they have begun or they began last time. And also they can trigger their attention there. And students try to remember a reading teacher, and usually they don't forget the teacher who taught them how to read. And you can read a short selection every day, and students continue at home. And maybe 10 minutes is okay. And you can also such kind of clubs, you can create your own clubs, you can conduct your clubs for students, reading clubs. This can be very useful and beneficial for our students. And you can add some kind of sound effect. When there are some emotional scenes, students can make different sounds. For example, they can make some music with their mouths, and which can be very fun in the classroom when they are, for example, reading a different story, such as how can I say, Little Red Riding Hood, yes, and the sound of a wolf they can make, and the sound of a girl and the grandmother, and etc. And designing a place is also very essential part of teaching reading. You can provide comfortable place to read and make several little houses with a door and window. Now I can show you how it looks like, such as here you can see you can organize such kind of houses or such kind of corners in the classroom. And when you are delivering reading class, sometimes 2 or 3 students go there this time, and the other 2 or 3 students go there next time, which can be very interesting for them. And they try to go to that place, they can go there and they can read there, and try to stick there someone is reading science. And also you can ask your students to design covers. They can, for example, they can read a story, a book, and they can make their own covers. They can draw pictures of the cover and engage the listeners. And you can also create or you can also organize there a magic carpet and play classical jazz music while they are reading, and in a low tune, or we can say background music. And also create magic carpet to read, which you can see in the picture. Students read there in a circle, and by this way you can make your reading very fun activity. And as we if we conclude, by reading, language acquisition can be achieved. Students can learn the language naturally, and it is a good model for future writing. If you usually, it means that many people say that in the USA or in the UK, they say that if you are a good reader, you can write a good essay or a good story. It depends on your creativity and reading abilities if you are a good writer. And it is a good opportunity for language study, and students can learn something spontaneously there, and they can understand and they can remember language structures, vocabulary or grammar there. And it is there should be genuinely selected authentic materials by a teacher. Usually there should be, or materials should be for native speakers, and pay attention to that. Usually try to use authentic materials. And you can differentiate scanning and skimming strategies. Also, students read for different purposes, such as pleasure or detailed information in the class or outside the class. And there should be content engagement, prediction, matching to the topic, and answer, and the other activities you have to create for your students, so that they could be good learners in the future, or they could be good readers in the future. Now, in many situations, we are trying to find some kind of reading strategies or beneficial reading strategies for our students while they are using their gadgets. Sometimes you can use their gadgets. You can create Kahoot, for example, quizzes for them after they have read a story, or they have read a passage there in the classroom. Thank you very much. Now, today I wanted to tell you about reading strategies and how reading looks like for a teacher, and how to organize a reading class, and how to conduct or how can we deliver our reading materials in a fun way to students.
Thank you very much, Nilufar Kurbanova. And now, please, guys, ask questions. Feel free and ask the questions, any questions you want, guys. Okay. Just one remark, guys. I'll told you several times about netiquette. Netiquette means that you should write your proper names, name and surname. That's it. But sometimes Gulbahar, I see, Shamsi Noor, and you have no Rashida. You haven't your name, surnames, guys, because it will be very difficult for us to issue your certificates. So next time, please.
Miss Jamila, now I'm going to ask some questions, comprehension questions. Now you can see here. Well, top-down processing checks background knowledge of readers on the given topic. True or false? Is it true, false?
Is it interactive or just?
Barno says it's true. Yes. Okay. Bottom-up processing in reading leads learners to actual words and sounds. True, false?
It's true.
It's true. Yes. And interactive model builds a connection between the reader and the learner.
It's true.
It means that interaction in reading, yes. And intensive reading, readers comprehend the main points of the text.
No.
False.
False.
Yes. Grammar and vocabulary are discussed in intensive or in extensive reading.
Intensive.
Intensive reading, yes.
Intensive.
And in intensive reading, readers focus on overall meaning of the material.
It's true. Yeah. True. Yeah.
In extensive, yes, it's true.
Yes, it is true.
Teaching reading has specific purposes.
True.
Yeah.
Okay.
True, yes.
Language proficiency is not important to select a reading material.
No. Important. It is important. It is important.
Yes.
And previewing, selecting a purpose, predicting, asking questions, guessing are reading skills, reading strategies, or integration of skills.
Reading strategies.
Reading strategies. Okay. And reading for gist, specific information, detailed comprehensions are reading skills, strategies,
Yes.
or teacher's objective. Teacher's objectives. And the important stages of a reading lesson.
Pre, while, post.
Pre, while, post. Yes. And students should understand 98% of vocabulary from the text. Is it important or not?
It is not important.
It is important. Usually students during your reading classes understand 98%, and 2% can be achieved by reading at home and or reading additionally. While teaching reading, most important skills be integrated.
While teaching, the most skills should be integrated.
Which skills should be integrated there?
With pronunciation.
Skills, language skills should be integrated. Language skills.
With writing, yeah.
Writing, reading, listening, and speaking. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So now you see, Nilufar, that everybody caught your presentation and answer. All answers were mostly true, right, in right way. Okay. So any more questions, guys?
No.
Mashkura, at last we see you. Mashkura. At last we see you live. Okay. Nilufar, so how did you like our auditory?
Thank you very much. Thank you for participation. You are active and engaging. And thank you.
Unfortunately, we couldn't see you, but anyway, in the advert, you will see your beautiful photo. So now Nilufar Kurbanova, not only a smart teacher, but she's a pretty lady as well and a good mom. And when we ask her to conduct some seminars in Malikoshers of Tashkent region, she always says, okay, so let's go. And she's with us always. Nilufar, we wish you good luck in your further.
Thank you.
Good. So are you going to participate in Fulbright program? Have you already done it? Nilufar?
Me?
Yes,
I'm trying.
Okay, good luck. But
thank you.
Guys, a lot of teachers ask me for the 100th times how to apply to Fulbright program. Please, will you help me with essay questions? I say, okay, go to UzTEA website and go to YouTube channel of UzTEA and you will see everything there. Because we conducted approximately 5 times about about participating in international programs and how to win there. So am I right, Salima Khan, Mashkura? Yes, and that's why
you are right.
it's challenging for me to answer all of your requests, guys. Okay,
and you should read a lot and you should improve your writing skills. because it's important. That's why reading is appreciated in many countries. And I had a fellow who traveled by T program to the US, and she said that in every class, in every lesson, students are asked to read for about 10 minutes, and they discuss, and they first of all they put their books on the shelf, and after that they go to the topic, even it is a physics class, even it is a math class, and they have to read, and after that they go to the library with their teachers, and until the age of 12 usually they are led by teachers to read. They are encouraged, so strongly encouraged to read, and students usually are given the reading list for a month, for a week by teachers, and parents also asked to monitor their reading materials, and after that they can achieve success, because without reading we cannot achieve anything. We cannot take any emotion of the material. Even we watch the videos, or even we watch the films of bestsellers.
Okay, thank you, Nilufar. If you remember our previous presenter, Farzana, from Al-Malik, Tashkent region, she told us that there is a post in most libraries which says forbidden books. Forbidden books, not only requested books, but they have also forbidden books. It means that your students cannot read, shouldn't read those books. Something bad maybe, I don't know. Nimasidir ma'nosi yoqmagan yoki terroristik narsalarmi nimalardir bo'ladi-da. Shuning uchun o'qimasin deb qo'ygan kitoblarning ro'yxati ham bor. Ustozlar, eng muhimi, eng qiziqarli joyi shuki, o'qimasin degandan keyin ba'zi o'quvchilarimiz imенно qiziqqani uchun o'qishga kirib ketadi-yu, lekin ularni saytiga ham kirolmaysiz o'shalarni yozilgandan keyin, yoki adashib kirib qolsa o'quvchi kirmas ekan, o'qimas ekan. Chunki xayoli buzilmasligi va hokazolar uchun. Ustozlar, shu Fulbright bo'yicha men просто ozgina o'zbekcha tushuntirib bermoqchi edim. 22 chisloda oxirgi deadline. Qo'limizdan kelgancha biz UzTEAchilar harakat qildik, sizlarga promote qildik buni. Facebookda ham aytdik, mana webinar, 5 ta webinar. Biz hali sentyabrda boshladik shuni. Ko'pchiliklar Fulbright programmasidan bexabar qolishgan ekan. Bu judayam anaqa mashkura, siz ham ishtirok etyapsiz, Salimaxon. Application to'ldirib bo'lib jo'natib bo'ldinglarmi? Mana eslab qolinglar, men boshqalarni ham ishtirok etayotganinglardan juda xursandman. Agar shu yutganlarning orasida shu Salimaxon bilan Mashkuraxon bo'lmasa, boshqa webinar o'tmayman deb o'zimga aytib qo'ydim. Yutqizgan bo'lib. Shu bet qilyapman-da sizlar bilan. Narzimbetova Venera borib keldi. Mana qarang-da, Venera qizimni. Borib keldilar, bizga prezentatsiya qildilar. Mana bolachasi bor, kichkina bolachasini tashlab Amerikaga borib kelgan ayolimizda. Shundaki devoted person bo'lgani uchun men juda appreciate qilaman. Venerachi, I love you so much, and I love all the active participants of UzTEA here. So regarding CLIL conference, guys, I have a lot of questions in my Telegram personal account. After I announce it here in our webinar, they have a lot of teachers who who has never heard about CLIL and they do want to participate. Yes, we are going to conduct it, to organize this kind of conference face-to-face, offline. We miss you guys. We want to see your faces, your smiling faces, your sparkling eyes. We still miss you. And that's why we are doing our best to do it. But remember, we are going to have a huge conference in summer, maybe in June, as it seems to me. And in April, we have young researchers project program, and we have, as it seems to me, 2 days conference. Okay, any questions? Any questions? Sodiq John Berdikulov and Mitadis Nurjanov, Bekjon, bironta gapingiz bormi? Har doim mana faol qatnashib kelyapsiz. 8 ta webinarda ishtirok etsangiz, certificate is yours. Okay, nima yangiliklar bo'lyapti chirchiqda?
Tinchlik hozircha.
Okay.
Xudo
Good.
xolasa keyin o'z bilan gaplashaman alohida, чтобы anav amalga oshmay qolgan anaqamizni xudo xolasa shu keyingi jumaga mo'ljal qilyapman.
Aha, useful for it. Mana bu yerda men bir narsa. Aha, хорошо, yaxshi. Xo'p, Nurjan. And it would be still useful for us if the certificate was also presented according to the responses given by the participants. So, oh, guys, didn't catch here. What? I have a suggestion. It would be better if this, I don't see this. Then if it would be better, this is given in document format, in doc format, and all listeners will, so I cannot read that. Something wrong. Okay, we'll see it while recording this webinar. Any questions, guys? Any questions? So what would you like? What kind of webinar you would like me to present, guys? So what do you want?
Webinar about a clear lesson.
Okay. Now Fergana is involved in CLIL as well. Особенности методики CLIL. Oh my God. Mahinur, good job. So Mahinur, will you tell us a few words? She was my participant in 𝗠𝗵𝗺𝗃, and as it seems to me, she is sick for CLIL. Okay, Mahinur, switch on your microphone. Yes, Mahinur, the floor is yours. Yes. Kasal bo'lgan Mahinur. Zarazить qilganman ko'pchilik.